Before anything else, welcome to Life Glitched, the place where I bring you fast person stories of betrayal, broken promises, and the moment that perfect life finally chews its cracks. If you enjoy raw, everyday relationship drama that could easily be your own, make sure you hit like, subscribe, and turn on the volume notification bell because what you're about to hear is how just two cold words on a phone screen blow apart almost 15 years of marriage and pushed a man to choose between living in a lie or protecting his children and starting over. Turn the volume up and let's begin.
My name is Daniel Carter. I'm 43 years old, and for a long time I honestly believed I knew my wife better than I knew myself. After so many years together, I was sure I could read every gesture, every silence, every change in her mood. That Tuesday afternoon, I was at the logistics company where I work as an operations coordinator, surrounded by spreadsheets, late emails, and the sound of forklifts moving pallets in the warehouse. It was such a normal day that, during a quick break, I grabbed my phone just because I wanted to hear my wife's voice, ask how her day was going, and send her some stupid affectionate joke. Instead of picking up, my screen lit up with a short reply, "Not now." 2 dry words. No emoji, no love, none of the warmth she had always had with me. It wasn't the content that hurt. It was the emptiness behind the phrase, a coldness I had never felt coming from her. I stared at that message like an idiot, opening and closing the chat as if the tone would change on the second or third read. It didn't. Something inside me cracked. I've always seen myself as a practical man. I spend my days fixing route problems, impossible deadlines, trucks that break down at the worst moment. When something doesn't work, I look for the failure and act. And in that instant, every instinct I had was screaming that something in my marriage was broken. My wife, Lucia, 39, worked as a real estate agent in a big city in the south of my country, a place I'll call Grey Haven. She had always been dedicated, one of the agency's stars, but in the last few months she had turned into almost a stranger at home. She started leaving earlier, coming back later, doing open houses on weekends, urgent clients on Sunday nights. Her phone, which used a live face up on the kitchen table, now seemed glued to her hand, with a new unlock method, face recognition, hidden notifications. When I calmly asked if everything was okay, she blamed the market, said competition was brutal, and if she didn't kill herself working, she'd fall behind. I tried to have real talks, mentioned couples therapy, suggested a weekend just for us at a quiet guest house outside the city. She always slipped away, changed the subject, invented meetings, repeated that this was the key moment in her career. So when I read that, "Not now," it felt like more than tiredness. It was distance. It was someone closing a door in my face. I called her again an hour later and went straight to voicemail. I waited a bit more, pretending to work, while the uneasy feeling in my chest grew into a hot knot I couldn't swallow. A little after 1, I just couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed my car keys, told my team I had an external meeting, and left. The agency where Lucia worked was about 20 minutes away. On the drive, my mind started rewinding everything I'd chosen not to see. A strange cologne on her clothes that wasn't hers, new lingerie hidden in the back of a drawer, quiet giggles on late-night calls that stopped as soon as I moved in bed. When I arrived, the receptionist, a young guy with a plastic smile, greeted me like I was any other client. I asked for Lucia, trying to sound casual. He said she'd gone out to show a property and probably wouldn't be back until the end of the day. I kept that fake calm tone and asked which property, in what neighborhood. He checked the computer, frowned, and said nothing was scheduled for that time, that sometimes she left one showing and went straight to personal commitments without logging everything in the system. He said it like it was the most normal thing in the world, not realizing the weight those words had just dropped on me. I thanked him, walked out, sat in my car across the street, and stayed there with the engine off, listening to my heart pounding in my throat. Then I remembered something I'd practically forgotten existed, a family location app we had installed years ago when our son was smaller to know where everyone was in an emergency. One of those apps you download once and never open again. I tapped it without much hope, sure it would be disabled. It wasn't. The dot with Lucia's name glowed clearly on the map, not at the agency and not in any neighborhood where she normally worked, but in a luxury residential complex in the wealthy side of the city, full of shiny glass buildings and imported cars I usually only saw from far away. Out of curiosity, I went to the agency's website and searched for listings in that area. Not a single property had Lucia's name on it. Nothing. It didn't add up. The chill in my stomach turned into a punch of reality. I typed the address into the GPS and drove there. The building was modern, steel and glass, with a discreet entrance and underground parking. I parked on a side street and immediately recognized Lucia's SUV, a gray one we had picked out together. I turned off the engine and waited. Minutes dragged like hours. I watched neighbors carrying shopping bags, delivery drivers, a man walking his dog. After more than half an hour, she walked out the front door of the building, hair a bit messy, wearing a blouse I had never seen at home. She wasn't alone. Walking next to her was a man older than me, tall, in a perfect gray suit, silver hair carefully styled, the posture of someone used to expensive restaurants and important meetings. They were talking quietly, laughing, standing too close, with a kind of intimacy in their body language that I recognized instantly. It was the language of two people who want each other. I didn't even need the proof that came next, but it came anyway. The man slipped an arm around Lucia's waist, gently tipped her chin up with his hand, and kissed her. It wasn't a quick greeting or automatic gesture. It was a long, confident kiss from someone who had done it many times before. I felt like I'd taken a punch to the gut. The air vanished. Even so, the practical part of my brain kicked in on its own. I pulled out my phone and started taking photos. 1, 2, 3. I captured the kiss, the hug, her satisfied smile when they pulled apart. The guy got into a shiny black sedan, and Lucia went back to her SUV, checked her phone, probably to see if I called, and drove off. I followed from a distance until she parked at a downtown cafe. She went in alone, sat down, opened her laptop, and started typing like it was just another workday. I didn't have the courage to go inside. I watched her from outside, feeling disgust, sadness, and disbelief, and then I drove back to the office on autopilot, pretending everything was normal until it was time to go home. That night, I was not the same man who had left that morning. Lucia arrived around 7, smiling, holding folders, as if nothing had happened. "Hey, love, how was your day?" she asked, giving me a quick kiss on the head while I helped our older son, Noah, with his math homework. "Quiet," I said, forcing my voice to stay calm. "And yours?" She started reciting a memorized script. That she'd shown 3 houses, close an offer. Traffic was insane. She was exhausted. Every word was a lie, and now I knew it. But I just nodded and let the evening run its course. The kids had dinner, watched some TV, and went to bed. Later, Lucia went to take a long shower, like she always did when she claimed to be worn out. That's when I moved. Her phone was charging on the kitchen counter. She'd changed the lock to face recognition, but there was an old emergency code we used before, a mix of family dates that, out of habit, I was sure she hadn't removed. My hand was shaking, but I entered the numbers slowly. The phone unlocked. I opened her messages, and there at the top was a pinned chat, Victor Hale. I tapped it and started scrolling up. What I read over the next minutes erased any remaining doubt. Messages going back about 9 months. Declarations of love. Details of secret meetings. Intimate photos of the two of them in hotel rooms, in cars, at restaurants. Complaints about me. "He doesn't even notice when I'm not home," Lucia had written weeks earlier. "You're the only one who makes me feel alive, Victor." I read everything with a coldness that surprised even me. From the context, I understood Victor was an investor in the real estate sector, someone she had met during a large negotiation at the start of the year, and what they had wasn't some one-night mistake. It was a second life, almost public, inside a social circle I had never been invited into. I took screenshots one by one, saved them, emailed them to myself into a hidden cloud folder only I knew about, deleted the sent mail trace, closed the apps, and put the phone back exactly where it had been. When Lucia came out of the bathroom, I was on the couch watching some random documentary, pretending not to care about anything. "I'm going to bed early. I'm wrecked," I said. She kissed my forehead. "Sleep well, babe." I lay down next to her later, but I couldn't close my eyes. I spent the whole night staring at the ceiling, building a plan. The next day I called work and said I had a serious family issue to deal with. I left the house early, before Lucia woke up. My first stop was the office of a family lawyer coworker had mentioned years earlier at a bar. Almost as a joke, if everything ever blows up, talk to attorney Martin Delgado. That guy doesn't lose. When I arrived, Mr. Delgado, a man in his early 50s with the calm eyes of someone who has seen everything, welcomed me into his simple but spotless office. I told him the story from the beginning, leaving nothing out. At the end, he asked if I had proof. I showed him the photos of the kiss in front of the building, the message screenshots, explained that she'd used our joint credit card for suspicious expenses. He nodded slowly. He told me that in our state, infidelity still mattered a lot, especially for property division and custody, that I'd done well to document everything, but we would need more. The clearer it is, the better, he said. I want financial traces and every bit of evidence we can get of recent meetings. If you can hold on a little, gather some more. He referred me to a financial analyst named Clara Ruiz and suggested I set up some discreet surveillance at home. I walked out feeling nauseous and strangely relieved. I had officially declared war. I went by an electronics store and bought a small, disguised security camera with remote access through an app. That same afternoon, while Lucia was supposedly with an important client, I installed the camera in the garage, aimed quietly at the front door so it wouldn't draw attention. On Thursday night, I invented a work trip to a nearby city, said a last-minute meeting had popped up, and I might be gone until Saturday morning. It was believable. Sometimes it really happened. Lucia seemed more relieved than sad. Okay, love, drive safe, text me later. Instead of driving for hours, I checked into a simple hotel 15 minutes from home, lay on the bed, and spent the night with my phone in my hand, watching the camera app. At 2:15 in the morning on Friday, a notification came in, motion detected. I opened the live feed. A sleek black car was parking in front of my house. Victor got out, looking perfect like he was going on a romantic date instead of walking into my home. The door opened and Lucia appeared in a robe, smiling, pulling him in for a kiss right in the entrance. They hugged, laughed, and he stepped inside. I watched a few seconds, just enough to be sure the video captured faces, license plate, everything. Then I closed the app, because watching more would destroy me further without adding any value. I poured myself half a glass of whiskey, something I hadn't done in a long time, and forced my exhausted body to sleep. The next morning I sent the video to the lawyer and to Clara. Mr. Delgado replied almost immediately, "This is more than enough. She brought her lover into your home while you were supposedly out of town. That carries a lot of weight for custody. We'll prepare everything so you can confront her this weekend." Clara called a few hours later, saying she'd already gone through some bank statements and had found expenses we'd never discussed. Expensive jewelry, dinners at fancy restaurants, charges from a resort and spa where, according to the dates, Lucia said she was on a training course. All on our joint credit card. The total of this double life was around $14,000 in family money. Saturday morning, I asked my parents to pick up Noah and our younger daughter, Emma, to spend the day with them. I only told them Lucia, and I needed to talk about adult stuff. The kids were thrilled to go with their grandparents. When the house was finally empty, I went to the kitchen, put a thick envelope on the counter, and waited. Lucia came in a few minutes later, still in pajamas, hair tied back carelessly, making coffee. "What's in that envelope?" she asked. I didn't answer. I opened it and spread everything across the stone countertop. The photos, the message screenshots, the bank statements with suspicious expenses highlighted in red, and at the end, several printed images from the camera footage, showing her and Victor kissing in our doorway in the middle of the night. The color drained from her face. "Daniel," she began, but I raised my hand. "On Tuesday you texted me that you were too busy." "Busy with what exactly?" "Busy destroying our family. Busy taking a guy to a luxury apartment, and then into the house where our kids sleep." My voice came out low, controlled, and poisoned. She stepped back like I'd hit her. "It's not like that. I can explain," she whispered, already crying before she finished the sentence. I let out a dry, humorless laugh. "Then explain it. Explain these 9 months of lies. Explain why you brought this man into the place where our kids wake up every morning. Explain how you were able to look me in the eye every day, kiss me, get in the same bed while you were planning secret meetings with him." Words poured out one after another, and I barely recognized my own voice. She launched into excuses, that she hadn't planned it, that it just happened, that she felt lonely, that I was always working, that Victor made her feel noticed, desirable. I slammed my hand on the counter. The papers jumped. Don't dump your choice on my shoulders. I work to pay for this house, the kids' school, your projects. I've always supported your career. If you were unhappy, you had 1,000 options. Talk to me. Ask for therapy. Ask for a separation. But you chose to lie. You chose to betray me again and again. She sobbed loudly, repeating that she loved me, that she loved our family, that she'd made a horrible mistake. I shook my head. A mistake is something you do once and immediately regret. What you did were decisions, day after day. This was planned. She tried to fight back, saying I wasn't perfect either, that I was always tired, never surprised her, that my head was always at work. I let her finish and then answered. I listened when you said you wanted to work more, that you needed weekends to take clients, and I stayed home with the kids to give you that space. I listened when you came home exhausted, and I never threw in your face. But you didn't listen when I asked for couple therapy. You ignored it when I suggested that trip for just the two of us. Do you know why? Because you were already living another life. The silence that followed filled the whole house. Finally, she sat on a stool, wiping tears with the back of her hand, and asked in a thin voice, "What are you going to do?" I took a deep breath. It's not what I'm going to do. It's what I've already done. I hired a lawyer and gave him all this evidence. The financial analyst is already tracking every cent you spend on this guy with our money. And on Monday, I'm filing for divorce. Her eyes widened. Daniel, no, we can fix this. Please, we'll get help. I'll end it with him. I lifted my hand again. Have you already ended it? Because he walked out of this house at 5 in the morning on Friday. That was less than 2 days ago. I know what time he left because I watched him, and you know I did. She turned even paler, realizing there was nowhere left to hide. Were you spying on me? She stammered. I gave a cold smile. I was protecting myself, me, our kids, and what was left of our life because it was obvious I couldn't count on you to do the right thing. I gathered the photos back into the envelope and concluded, here's what you're going to do now. You're going to pick up your phone, call Victor in front of me, and end it. Then you're going to go upstairs, pack your things, and leave this house today. Go to a hotel, his place, wherever you want, but you're not sleeping here again. On Monday, we start dealing with the practical stuff through our lawyers. She started shouting the kids' names, saying I couldn't take them away from her. I replied, no one is forbidding you from being their mother, but custody will be decided by a judge based on the evidence. And part of that evidence is you bringing your lover into this house while our kids slept upstairs. Mr. Delgado is pretty confident that primary custody will go to me. You'll see them, but their daily routine will be with me. She collapsed into sobs. I felt a tiny flicker of compassion, not because she didn't deserve the consequences, but because I still remember the girl I met years ago. That compassion drowned quickly in the image of Victor slipping into my home in the middle of the night. You should have thought about the kids that night, I said in a flat tone. Now pick up the phone. After several frozen seconds, she unlocked her phone with trembling hands, turned on the speaker, and called. Victor answered on the third ring, his voice warm. Hey, beautiful. I thought you texted me earlier. Lucia looked at me, terrified, and said through sobs, Victor, it's over. I can't keep doing this. My husband found out everything. He has photos, videos, messages. He's filing for divorce. We can't see each other ever again. On the other end, there was a long, uncomfortable pause. When he spoke again, his tone was no longer sweet. It was distant and cold. I get it. It was fun while it lasted. Good luck with all of that, Lucia. Then he hung up. She stared at the screen like she couldn't believe what had just happened. He just ended it, she whispered. I shrugged. Men like him enjoy the secret, glamorous version, not the real part with paperwork, child support, custody, and a ruined reputation. Now you're seeing how much you really meant to him. It wasn't comfort. It was just a fact. I put her car keys in her hand and said, You have 1 hour to pack your bags. I'll be right here in the living room. Take only what's yours. We'll sort out the rest legally. She went upstairs, dragging her feet. I heard closet doors, drawers, suitcase wheels scraping across the floor. I stayed on the couch, completely drained but strangely relieved. The lie was over. About 50 minutes later, she came down with 2 large suitcases, stopped at the door, looked at me, and whispered, I really am sorry. I only replied, So am I. She walked out, closed the door gently, and the silence that followed was different. Heavy but clean. The next months were a storm of legal and emotional battles. Even with evidence, a divorce doesn't resolve overnight. Mr. Delgado did his job with surgical calm, using every photo, every statement, every message to build a solid case. Clara traced every dollar Lucia had spent on Victor using marital money. Expensive gifts, weekend trips, dinners at places I'd never set foot in. The total was somewhere around $14,000, not counting the emotional cost. On her side, Lucia hired a lawyer who tried to paint me as an absent, emotionally distant husband, arguing that even with the betrayal she deserved half of everything. It didn't work. The evidence spoke louder. After about 5 months of negotiations and hearings, it was decided that primary custody of Noah and Emma would be mine. Lucia would have alternate weekends and one afternoon a week under a clearly defined schedule. I kept the house, buying out her portion based on an appraisal adjusted for the money she'd spent on the affair. The division of assets ended up roughly 60% for me and 40% for her, precisely because of the misuse of marital funds. Lucia kept working as an agent, but the impact was quick. The real estate world in Greyhaven was smaller than it looked, and gossip spread faster than any sports car. Some conservative clients started avoiding her. At the agency, she went from being an asset to a PR problem, until they politely suggested she look for another job. She ended up in a smaller firm, selling cheaper properties for much lower commissions. Victor disappeared, just like I expected. He blocked her on social media, changed his number, and when she tried reaching him through mutual acquaintances, she found out he was already seeing another woman, a divorced business owner his own age. Lucia had to swallow that replacement as another reminder that she had destroyed her life for someone who was never willing to face anything for her. Our mutual friends split. Those who were truly close to me stayed on my side once they heard the full story. Some people I thought were couple friends started inviting only me and the kids to dinners and barbecues. Lucia grew more and more isolated, tasting the same loneliness she complained about, but now for very different reasons. The kids suffered, of course. Noah, on the edge of his teenage years, understood more than I ever wanted him to. I was always honest with him and with Emma, as much as each of them could handle. I explained that their mother and I couldn't live together anymore because serious things had happened that broke our trust. I never badmouthed Lucia in front of them, even when I was furious, but I didn't lie either. One day, Noah sat next to me on the couch and asked, voice steady but eyes full of questions, "Dad, Mom cheated on you, right?" I took a deep breath and answered, "Yes, son. She made very serious choices that hurt a lot of people, but this is adult stuff. You don't have to pick a side. You can keep loving both of us." I watched his face harden a little, a forced maturity I never wanted to come so early. Emma, younger, didn't grasp all the details, but she felt the absence of all of us under one roof. Sometimes she cried without really knowing why. I learned to hug more, listen more, be more present than ever. Around a year and a half after that, not now, my life looked completely different. The wounds were still there, but they weren't bleeding all the time. During that phase, I met Hannah, a 37-year-old ER nurse, a friend of friends, at a simple weekend barbecue. She was almost the opposite of the image I had of Lucia at the end of our marriage. Direct, no games, sharp sense of humor, zero patience for emotional manipulation. She'd been through a divorce too, no kids, and knew what it was like to pick up the pieces of a life that looked perfect from the outside and rotten on the inside. We started slowly, with no big expectations, and from the beginning we agreed on one basic rule: total honesty. No half-truths, no disappearing acts. After about 7 months, I introduced Hannah to Noah and Emma. I was nervous, but to my surprise, they warmed up to her quickly. Hannah never tried to replace anyone. With Emma, she was playful, helped with schoolwork, took her out for little adventures. With Noah, she was respectful and straightforward, treating him like someone intelligent, not a clueless kid. I saw in both their eyes a kind of trust they don't give just any adult. One spring afternoon, I took all of us to a big city park. No helicopter, no fancy dinner, just a blanket on the grass, a simple picnic, and a ring in my pocket. Noah and Emma knew what was coming. I told them when I asked Hannah to stand with me under a huge tree and put the little box in her hand. The kids were trying not to laugh. I asked my question with no rehearsed speech, just saying what I felt. Hannah said yes without hesitation. Noah clapped like crazy. Emma jumped into my arms. In that moment, I understood that my family had changed shape, but it hadn't disappeared. It had found a different, more honest way to exist. Lucia, meanwhile, was still alone. She moved into a small apartment in a cheaper neighborhood of Greyhaven. She watched her income drop and her social life shrink. From time to time, she sent long messages full of regret, asking for forgiveness, saying she wanted to at least rebuild some kind of friendship for the kids' sake. I always answered politely, but with firm boundaries. We could be civil co-parents, but friends, no. That was over. It wasn't eternal hatred. It was self-preservation. For me, trust is like a glass. If it falls and shatters like that, you might glue it back together, but it's never the same. She tried dating other men, but nothing lasted. Some backed off when they heard her story. Others couldn't handle the weight of the guilt she carried, as if she was always waiting to be abandoned again. Almost 2 years after that morning in the kitchen, I was sitting in the stands at a soccer field watching Emma play, still clumsy, but full of enthusiasm. Hannah was beside me, yelling her name every time she went near the ball. Noah, taller than I seemed to remember each day, had his phone in his hand, but kept looking up to cheer for his sister. On the other side of the field, Lucia was also watching, alone, sitting a bit apart from the other parents. She clapped when Emma touched the ball, but there was a clear distance between her and the rest of our reality. I looked at her for a few seconds. For the first time, I didn't feel anger or satisfaction for what life had taken from her. I didn't feel pity or nostalgia. I felt nothing. She was simply the person with whom I shared custody of my children. Nothing more. That night, after the game, while Hannah made dinner and I helped Emma with her homework, Noah came over. "Dad, can I ask you something?" he said. "Of course," I replied. He stayed quiet for a moment, choosing his words. "Are you still mad at Mom for what happened?" I thought about it. "No, son. I was angry for a long time. But if I let that live inside me forever, it would eat me alive. Your mom made very bad decisions, hurt a lot of people, and now she lives with the consequences. We, on the other hand, moved forward. We built something else, something better." He nodded slowly. "Hannah is a good person. I'm glad you found her," he said. My chest warmed with pride. "Me too, kid." Later, when the kids were asleep, Hannah and I sat in the backyard, each with a beer, under a clear, starry sky. She gave me a sideways look and asked what I was thinking about. I smirked. "About that, not now, I got at work." At the time I thought it was just rude. Today I see it was the clearest signal I could have received. If she'd answered me normally that day, I probably would have kept ignoring all the signs for another year or two. I would have kept living in a house that looked perfect, but was full of cracks. Hannah squeezed my hand. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to us is exactly what makes room for something much better. If she hadn't been foolish enough to lose you, I never would have met you. I nodded. Lucia's betrayal destroyed a lot, made the ground open under my feet, but it also created space for something new. She chose the path of lies and shortcuts, easy thrills. At first it looked like she was winning. Secret romance, trips, attention, adrenaline. In the end, what she got was an empty apartment, a damaged career, a lover who vanished, and children who look at her with a wariness no child should have to learn so early. I decided to face the truth, even when all I wanted was to run away. I chose to protect my kids, my assets, and my sanity. I learned that love without trust is just a pretty facade hiding rot. I learned that it's better to suffer once and heal than to spend years pretending nothing is wrong. And I understood that justice doesn't always feel like movie-style revenge. Sometimes justice is simply moving on, rebuilding your life with dignity, and letting natural consequences do their work. Today I have by my side a woman who truly values me, kids who respect me because they saw how I acted when everything fell apart, and an inner peace that seemed impossible on that afternoon when I read, "Not now," in the middle of my shift. That cold message, which felt like the beginning of the end, was really the push I needed to get out of the wrong place. As strange as it sounds, I'm grateful it appeared on my screen exactly the way it did. If you've listened to my story all the way to the end, thank you for staying with me. If you want more stories like this, hit the like button, tell me in the comments what you would have done in my shoes, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next videos. I'll talk to you in the next story.